Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you all for joining us for our Saturday Power Hour. This Saturday, we are, as you all know, every Saturday we actually do something that benefits our community, especially family wise, not just the girls that we normally serve under Girls Like Me Project. And this Saturday morning is no different, but this is a response to what's happening in our communities now across the country and really truly all around the globe as we are seeing uprisings against police brutality and excessive force and the just overwhelming police state that we find ourselves in. So even as we do that, though, we want to always bring in a little bit of a herstory moment. And today's herstory moment is a day that we want to acknowledge the birth of Marian Wright Edelman, who is the founder and CEO of the Children's Defense Fund. And what better person do we acknowledge today than someone who actually started something for the absolute protection and advocacy of children? And so we want to give a happy birthday to Miriam Wright Edelman. Also, this marks the day in 1987 that Mae Jemison, who is a Chicago native, a Chicago Girls Like Me, who actually started her career as a with NASA, which would eventually take her to be the first Black woman in space. And so we give a huge shout out for her. Yay! I think those are fundamentally important today because they represent two things. They represent the advocacy and the defense of our children, our young people, our young Black boys, and as we know, even our Black girls who face the same inherent deaths. So as we look at Breonna Taylor, as we look at Atatani, oh Lord, I'm messing up her name. Lord, I'm so sorry. But as we look at all of the deaths of Black women and Black girls, as we look at the George Floyd unfortunate cases, as we look at Ahmaud Arbery cases, as we look at all of the cases, even here at home with Laquan McDonald and Ronnie Man Harris, all of those cases, we know that our children need absolute protection from the powers that be. But we also know that Mae Jemison reflects to us what could be the possibility going into space, just the new thing we can bring. And so we want to think about what new thing can we bring coming out of these uprisings. And that is what people are taking to the streets about. And so I want to join me now, Attorney Shay Allen of Shay T. Allen Law Firm.
Hello, hello. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, and I know you don't have a lot of time, Shay, so we're going to try to pack in as much as we can with you this morning, just to ensure that as people head out with these uprisings, we know that there are a lot of passion, a lot of fierceness, and people are demanding change. A lot of emotions are high, but we want to keep our young people and everybody safe. And so you're here to share with us just some of the rights of protesters as they're out. We know that the president of the Chicago Police Board himself was a part of some police excessive force by police even. So
Mhm.
what rights, what are the basic rights that people need to know when they're heading out for protesting?
Sure, sure. First, I'd like to say thank you for the Girls Like Me project for having me on today. It's always a pleasure. In essence, you keep hearing people talking about the First Amendment right, and that's the First Amendment right to peacefully assemble. So that's ingrained into our Constitution. So when you're out protesting, you have the right to do that. The important word there that the Constitution makes clear is peacefully. You have the right to march. You have the right to have signs, which is your freedom of speech. You have the right to say different slogans and different monikers while you're out protesting. And these are all the rights you have to do. The police at that particular junction really there shouldn't be any interaction with the police officer at that point. When you are protesting, their only concern at that point should be keeping protesters safe, and maybe getting a hold of traffic or something to that effect. But anything else outside of that, there is no other role that police officers have to play during a protest unless they want to join in the protest. There's no other purpose for them to be involved. So in general, you have the right to peacefully protest whenever, however, and whenever you feel is appropriate.
And so, what we know also, though, is peacefully also means or can mean by the law that peacefully means that you have to be in a certain space. So, you can't be in the streets. What are the parameters? Because peace means that it has to be in a parameter of what the permit says.
Yeah, so states have the right to, I guess we could say, modify federal or constitutional law as long as it's generic, as long as it's fair. So what a lot of states do is, if you're going to have a large protest, they want you to register, or get a permit to do that, and they'll lay out the area you're going to go, how long it's going to be, and that sort of thing. I chuckled a little bit because it sort of defeats the purpose of a protest if I have to tell you when and where it's coming, how long it's going to be, and where is it going to be. It sounds like I'm, making an appointment at the barbershop or something. But by the law, then yes, that's what you're supposed to do. The police, if they so chose, they could say, yeah, if you're obstructing traffic, or if you're obstructing, blocking an entrance to a fire station or something to that effect, that yes, you are causing a danger in their eyes to other pedestrians or other people, then they can request you to move in that instance. Except I find that in most cases, it's usually just best for officers at that point to just redirect traffic, shut streets off, and make sure the protesters get to uh, voice and protest in that way.
Because that's the point of a protest. A protest is not to convenience everyone and to have a moment where everyone just keeps working as is, right?
Well, absolutely. I find it amusing. Protests and what's going on. It's supposed to, the job is supposed to make people uncomfortable.
Mhm.
People should be uncomfortable so they can then sit down and listen. And the only way people are going to change, the only way change comes is if you are uncomfortable. So without that, no change will come.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an inconvenient truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. King often set out to be arrested. Like that was the goal of the day, was to fill up the jail sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that comes to when you get into play, right? If someone is arrested or if they're taken into custody, what should be before they even taken into custody, before they reach to you, what should they do to prepare for that arrest,
Mm-hmm.
that very probable arrest? What
Right.
do they do going into a protest?
Well, a couple of things. So one of the things that was, great about the civil rights movement is that it was very coordinated. So a lot of times there would be, a meeting before a march would take place, and at that meeting, lawyers would be there,
Mhm.
and they would have 10 or so lawyers there, and they would say, "Look, these are the 10 lawyers. These are their phone numbers. These are their names." And the lawyers would have everybody's phone numbers, everyone's name. So if you get arrested, these are the people that are going to come represent you. So unfortunately, that doesn't exist all the time now. So what you can do now is, one smart thing is, always try to be around someone else. So if you are arrested, make sure someone knows your name, and try to be persistent as possible to find out where they're taking the person. So then you can know the person's name and their information, so a lawyer, attorney can get there. The other thing is, like I always tell everyone else, there's no need to talk to the police at all. All you have to do legally is provide identification. Everything else is extra. So you don't have to speak to them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to interact with them. After they have your information, that's it. So the safest thing to do is just make sure someone knows where you're at, someone knows your name, and if possible, a phone number, so that if someone in your family needs to reach or something to that effect, do that as well.
Because you also, Shay, need to maybe have your number before they go, right? Maybe they should have a lawyer that they talk to, that they say, let me make sure that I have this number on my person, or you have it on you, so that these are the people we will call. This is a list of lawyers we will call.
Absolutely. I myself, I posted online that I was representing protesters pro bono.
Hmm.
So I've gotten calls about representation about people that have been arrested during the protest, and of course, so I'm taking care of those pro bono. So there are other attorneys who are doing similar. So that's another avenue to take too.
So Shay, I want to touch on that a little bit because you said you just said you have to leave actually in about 12 minutes about another case of excessive force. Tell me on average how, since you posted that, how many people, how many calls have you gotten, and how many do you know that your colleague has gotten on average this week?
I would say total probably around 15.
15.
Yeah.
So if we would say that every attorney who people have the access to, if they're getting, we can say that the average is probably 15.
Yes, I would say that. Yes.
So we can say that hundreds of people are being apprehended, and some of them haven't been able to call. So some calls you all haven't gotten because people don't know where their family members are, how to get their family members.
Right. Something else that I've been hearing, unfortunately, from colleagues, is that the police are stonewalling them in regards to where their loved ones are. So they'll go to the station, they don't get an answer, they won't tell them what they are, they won't check to see where they are. And I even heard of some attorneys getting stonewalled at police stations in regards to not be able to see their clients when they go there, and the police not being forthcoming about where their clients are, or and not immediately let them see their clients like it's like their constitutional right call for. You hate to see that, but I'm not surprised, unfortunately. But it should never happen either way.
So we have a question. So in the stonewalling, and obviously, I think you answered this, and this needs to be asked, but we need to clarify it. So are you saying that when someone is arrested and nobody knows where they are, that means that they have not been allowed to make calls or contact anybody,
Correct.
and
Correct.
you're at that point just trying to find them, to locate
Yep.
them. So
Yep.
so people are being held without a phone call. Shay, is that legal?
So the normal practice here in Illinois is if you're arrested, you get a phone call. I mean, legally, there's no constitutional right to a phone call or anything to that effect. But in regards to just human decency and treating someone as though they are a human, you give them a phone call to let someone know, so they can let someone know where they are. It's very frightening for family members and friends, for a family member to get taken by the police and you have no idea where they are, because as we all know, anything can happen in between that time. So um, it happens far too often where they don't get a phone call at all, or they get a phone call hours after they've already been in custody for hours.
Mhm. So if a person, so what's the longest that they can keep you in custody legally? If you want
48 hours.
48 hours.
48 hours. So yeah, 48 hours is kind of the federal bright line rule. Some people in Illinois, some cases have said 72 hours. I subscribe to 48 hours. You can't keep someone more than 2 days without charging them with something.
We so once they, if they are, so when they, if they get to you and they tell you these things, I was held for I was held for 53 hours. I didn't have a phone call. I didn't get my Marian. Like what should have happened between the arrest and getting out of jail and speaking with you? I mean, just from the first confrontation with police, how does that work?
Um, as soon when they're arrested, they should be
Sorry,
taken to a station.
let me
What?
stop you. What? How do I know that I am actually being arrested? How will I know that I'm being arrested?
Well,
Is it
in my eyes, is when you're a custodial detainment. So in my eyes is when you feel like you no longer have control over whether you can leave or not. So I don't even think it's a matter of being in handcuffs per se. Say you were standing there and four officers were surrounding you, and you couldn't walk away. In my eyes, and you're in custody, you're under arrest. So when you no longer feel that you can leave on your own accord, you're under arrest. To
mm.
make it easier, handcuffs, of course, uh, I think clearly mean you're under arrest as well.
But
Um,
sure.
hmm? What's that?
People, I see people in handcuffs all the time on the side of the road as their car is being searched. Are they being arrested at that time?
Legally, I would argue yes. What officers try to say to get around that, and what some judges let them get away with, is that they're being detained, which in my eyes is nonsense. If you're in handcuffs and you are no longer under, your liberty has been taken, you are under arrest, and that's the end of the discussion in my mind. But legally, some judges agree with the fact that you can detain someone momentarily without arresting them. But in my eyes, and in many cases, other cases, and prior instances, other judges and people have agreed with that as well.
So we will hurry so we can get to the next point. So first and foremost, if you
Uh,
or not, can you hear me, Shay?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So we want people to make sure that they have a legal representative's information on their person, and the person with them has it. It would be best though if you're going out as a group, if you're organized, that all organizations that are taking people out to protest, that you all have at least three attorneys who
Right.
will work with you and make sure that people can call, and you all, they know where you are, so that they then know about where you may perhaps be taken into a station. um, if you are arrested or if you're handcuffed, you are under arrest.
Hmm.
You're under arrest. So everything that happens from that point on, you need to be very clear about. Shay, should they be looking at badges and badge numbers? What should they be looking at to remember what has happened?
Absolutely. I think it's important to get badge numbers and names, and that should be displayed on every officer's right there on their star, right on their chest, whether it's over a vest or on their shirt. It should be right there. If there's ever a time an officers they're covering that up, or they have sometimes the way they put the star in is it's like an elastic little band there. Some officers put that elastic band over their star number. They shouldn't do that. And if, as a matter of fact, if you ask an officer for their name and star number, they should give it up easily, because they shouldn't have anything to hide. So if you ask that information, they should give it to you.
Wow. Last question. I know you have to go, Shay. And we probably won't even be able to get into the whole thing, because what people are facing now is just the understanding. You know, we're fighting for justice on many levels, not just behind police murders and police brutalities, but the way police interact with our communities overall. We're facing structural violence that takes place in our schools, in our corporations, the oppression. People, that's what people are really protesting against. But in terms of the police, and just the law, once we have a hashtag, unfortunately, we then start seeing things play out in courts, and you see indictments and grand juries and charges going up, down, first, second, third. And people who don't know are really befuddled about what does it mean. We don't
Mhm.
have enough time at all for you to get into it, but can you, in as succinct as you can, help people understand what the difference is in a grand jury and an indictment? How do we get to an indictment? Let's just start there. What does an indictment even mean?
Yeah,
And yeah.
an indictment is the official document that is used to felony criminal charges forward. So in Illinois, there are two different ways to get an indictment, or really, there's only one way to get an indictment. That's the grand jury. The grand jury, the way that works is that 12 people, they're put in a room, they're subpoenaed, and they're put in a room. They're in that room for several weeks, and the prosecutor and an officer go into that room, and the prosecutor will ask officers questions about different cases they want to indict people on or bring forth. The grand jury then listens to the evidence, and then they decide whether or not to give what's called a true bill. A true bill means that if they give that, then the indictment is approved. But the sad reality is 99% uh, 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 grand juries give true bills. So it's not like it's a question. So usually when you go to the grand jury, that means they're going to get an indictment.
Mm. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, Shay, there were questions about Chauvin and what happened with in this last case, George Floyd's murderer. He wasn't charged at first, and then when he did get charged, it was third degree, or yeah, it was third
Third
degree.
degree. Mm-hmm.
And people were saying they were, that the prosecutor couldn't go higher because there's probability of proving it. So what does that mean? Is there a possibility to prove second degree based on what we've seen with our own eyes?
Well, absolutely. So my opinion was different from a lot of people in this instance, because as a former prosecutor, I saw, and then what you continue to see is that more often than not, uh, people are charged with whatever the prosecutors think is possible. What I think they charge whether they can prove it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So they throw charges are thrown out, charges are put there, and then they take them to trial and they see what sticks and what doesn't. So I think I don't know why in prosecuting police officers there's such an air of um, being so precautious. Uh, Treat a police officer like we treat any other person accused of a crime. I think at that point, it's just another citizen. So you should approach the case as you would any other case. It seems to me that uh, prosecutors are, it's like they're scared when it's time to prosecute a police officer, which in my mind leads to another point that I think whenever police officers are arrested, they should be prosecuted by a special prosecutor who can be anybody. It can be me. It can
Mm-hmm.
be a criminal defense attorney, because prosecutors and attorney generals, they work too closely with police. There's
Mm-hmm.
no way that I think you could honestly and with this prosecute a police officer with the same vigor than you would someone else. If you work with someone for 10, 15, 20 years and then you have to turn around and prosecute them, they're human beings, so that makes it tough.
Mm-hmm.
But to wrap all that up, I think he could have been charged with second degree initially. He could have been charged with first degree. There are, I don't have all the facts of the case, but what I've seen, there are arguments to show premeditation circumstantially. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens in many of these cases. I've had a myriad of cases where people were overcharged profusely,
Mm-hmm.
and the charges, prosecutors don't come to me and say, well, we can't prove that charge, so we're going to dismiss it. You know what they do? We go to trial and they make me win those particular counts.
Mm-hmm.
So do the same thing to the police officer.
So there's a question that someone says, police have that they understand that police have a certain immunity. Is that accurate? Is that true?
Yeah, police have something called qualified immunity. Um, uh, and what it does is it protects them in certain aspects of the law. In essence, if they're working or they're in their duties when something happens, then they can be protected in certain areas. Except when it becomes negligent or becomes criminal, then that qualified immunity goes away.
So in
Um,
this case, so obviously in this case, qualified immunity went out the window. The
yes,
the at 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The
absolutely.
Yeah. So I know you have to go. Tell me how much more time can we have with you? If I have one more question for you.
I can do another probably 5 minutes or so.
Okay, perfect. So oh God, it's so much, Shay. So one of the things, the most important thing I think I want to touch on is the census, because you just said something, and you were so kind to spend time with us at Studio Movie Grill for the viewing of Just Mercy, that movie, and we talked about the camaraderie, the intimacy, and relationship between prosecutors and police officers, and even judges. And it's just, if you're in the system long enough, you become, and obviously when you take away race barriers and class barriers, the intimacy is even closer. We are now facing our last month of census reporting. We are in the throes of it, Shay. How important is that in terms of how many? We talked about this before, but I don't think we can ever say it enough. How important is the census to the judicial system?
Sure. It's important because Census helps figure out, in essence, how many representatives you get in Congress, or maybe how many representatives you get to represent you statewide. So it's those people, those elected officials, that a lot of times can appoint judges, or a lot of times endorse judges, or a lot of times help. Um, there were elected officials that made up the whole sub circuit sort of thing. And just generically, the sub circuits are smaller segments of the state where people can run and become judges. And the sub circuits were set up to try to increase the number of minority judges. And those were elected officials. They were elected officials that helped set up those sub circuits. So with the census, if everyone's not counted, you can lose representation in Congress, and you can lose it also on another level. So it's very important that everyone gets counted to, so you can get your resources.
So we get our resources because we already know that there has been a huge shift and migration out of Chicago. It's a reverse migration, so we've lost citizens already, and out of Cook County. So we need as many. We need everybody counted. Shay, last question for you is this: as the cries go out to defund the police and to take police out of schools, what can people do to just stay abreast of what these laws are that are in place with or without the police? Maybe I'm conflating two questions, but I really want people to understand that Georgia, like for instance, in Georgia, there's no hate crime law, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the people who murdered Ahmaud Arbery and called him the N word cannot be arrested for it, can't be charged with a hate crime. Here
Mm-hmm.
in Illinois, we have certain things, we have certain gun laws. What are the laws that you know of that people need to be aware of right now in terms of police accountability?
Hmm. That's a tough question because in regards to police accountability, I guess the most important thing to pay attention to right now is if officers have their cameras on. Now they should be, it should be a huge square right on the front of them. It should be very visible, or a smaller camera that just on their pocket should be visible, and you should see a flashing light, a green flashing light that usually shows that the camera is on. So I think right now it's very important that officers should always have that camera on, always have it going, because honestly, it helps everyone. Now, there's a state, there's a statute that says they need the cameras, and there's also a CPD guideline that says it's supposed to use the cameras. So the camera should always be on, always be rolling. And I think something that's important, stay on your local, your alderman, your state rep, state senator, stay on their case about keeping officers accountable. I think there should be more of a penalty if officers don't have their cameras on. I think officers should be suspended, fired, cases should be thrown out. I've had too many cases where there's just no camera footage and no explanation, even if it is explanation, just no camera footage, and they just didn't have their cameras, and no one blinks an eye.
Mhm.
And it infuriates me. It makes me angry because you have them and you're supposed to use it. That way, everyone is safe, right? You get to see exactly what happens, so we don't have to worry about who's lying or not.
From the moment that from the moment of the first interaction, we would have it, not
Yep.
in between, not things out. But we, the consent decree, the Department of Justice told us in plain language that the Chicago Police Department is corrupt. I mean, in
Mm.
no uncertain terms that happen, and we have a consent decree that states all of the things that need to happen, and those cameras being one of them. Shay, I know we don't have time with you, so I do want people to have the way that they can contact you. I'm going to put it at the bottom of the screen. If you tell it to me, I'll place it there so that people can reach out to you if they need your support, your help,
Sure.
or your counsel.
So you can. My number is 708 960 0113, and then my email is sallen, ALLEN, at attorney Shay, SHAY, T allen.com.
Okay, I want people to make sure that you are absolutely reach out to Shay. He is doing pro bono work right now as we face these uprisings. Uh, but we definitely know, and Shay, I think you agree that uprisings and pushback is necessary for change. And we know that in this time, as we just saw the Tulsa, Oklahoma, the anniversary of the Tulsa,
Mhm.
Oklahoma Wall Street burning and bombing, that the time is now for us to do what we need to do for equity, for parity, and for justice.
Yeah, and I just want to add quickly too. Even outside of the criminal cases, I also do civil rights cases. So if anybody has been the victim of excessive force or any other harassment by the police, you can also reach out to me because that is another great way to hold the police department accountable.
Yes. And that's what we have to do. And Shay, we definitely want to have you come back. You'll be having your own outlet and platform very soon so that people can get this kind of information from you because it's so important.
Absolutely.
We face too much um, too much with ignorance of the law, and a lot of times that's the only thing stopping us from getting justice is simply not knowing our rights and simply not knowing how to navigate a system that's meant to intimidate us, meant to kind of I don't know. I'm gonna let you go because we keep having
But
these
actually, I just found out that my meeting got pushed back, so I can
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 stay
finish out.
yay
Hmm.
because I have so much more for you.
Okay. Uh,
So we are now this week. We heard that the CPD, Chicago Police Department, is facing. They're trying to get their contract renewed and extended so that they can keep their student resource officers the contract to do that. Shay, in 19, and I pray that we're gonna pray to God and the Most High that this internet stays stable. In 1992, September of 1992, I just turned 17 years old, maybe a week prior.
mhm.
And on this day, I was at school. School for myself let out earlier than my sister, my little sister, but we went to school together, so I couldn't go home without her. So I had about an hour to waste around. And Shay, I did. This was at Simeon Vocational High School, 82nd and Vincennes. And I left school. There was a candy store at the end. Myself, my boyfriend, my little friends, we all were outside. And obviously, the police officers are trying to get you to move off school property and leave. And one of the police officers, we exchanged some words. He was trying to get us to go. Me being the loudmouth that I am, have always been, I said some things back to him. He didn't like it and basically told me to get going, whatever. So we continue to go, spend time at the game room as much as I possibly can, but how much time can you really spend there? Other people are leaving. I head back to school, Shay, and I remember like it was yesterday. I head back to school, and the police officer sees me coming, and then he starts to come towards me and ask me, "Did I hear what he told me? Why am I still here?" I'm explaining. Obviously, I'm not saying, "Sir, I'm just here." Obviously, I was also combative, and he was too. But Shay, I stood in 1992. I stood 5 feet, and I weighed at most 93 pounds on a good day after eating and fully clothed. Right.
Mhm.
This officer, I said something to him. I don't even remember what I said, but whatever it was, infuriated him so much that at 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, this is a big guy. He took his hand and slapped me across my left cheek with
Wow.
the full force of his hand. I spent around so that did a 180. So I was facing south. By the time he slapped me, I was north, my face up to the gate, the chain link gate, and my arm behind my back as far as it could go, twisted.
Wow.
And he then just began to berate me and tell me who did I think I was, and did now do I see what my mouth got me into, and other people are saying things to him, and he's telling them to get back right. He takes me into the school. The teacher is the teacher. I have to really, the trauma of it is still sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my principal, Mrs. Graham, the look on her face, the horror on her face to see me coming in school like that with him, because I was resisting. He was pushing me. But you know, if you have handcuffs on,
Mm-hmm.
you can be off balance, right? So he's pushing me. I'm trying not to fall, but I'm also trying not to go forward. And the principal, is trying to intervene. He tells her this is police business now. She's in custody. So he's taking me to the office that they have in the school, right? Where at this point it's almost like I'm being booked. My mother is called. I don't remember if they call her or if someone or the principal come up. The principal calls her. My mom rushes and she busts in the door. They're like, "No, you can't come in here." She's 17. So that was traumatic. I mean, the rest of the story is traumatic as well, but it was so traumatic, that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 20, 23 years later, my daughter attends St. Arts High School down on 5900 North. Um, she is late for school. Police officers are just randomly making these stops for children. The school was less than a block away from the train that she got off of. As soon as she got off the train, police began to harass a group of students, all black students.
Mm-hmm.
And other students who were not black were allowed to walk past. All black students were detained, asked what school did they go to, why weren't they at school, and they were not late as in it's 10 o'clock in the morning. They were late as in school starts at 8:15, it's 8:23.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter is told to get in the car, and she's like, "No, I'm not." They're gonna take her to school. She refuses to ride to the school. They meet her at the school, Shay.
Mm-hmm.
Demand her name, demand all of her personal information, force the school to give up her information. I find out about this and go up to the school. And my question is I want to talk to the white shirt in charge. Nobody can identify these officers because they refuse to give my daughter their names.
Mm-hmm.
One officer, I was able to locate his name and number, his badge number, but the other officer is non-existent. And I was told that if they didn't call it in, it wasn't called in, it's not really a call.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't find the incident at all, Shay. They did this to these students, these black students up north. It was almost like a sting operation that they did this to them weekly for about 2 months. Now, when I spoke to the I don't know if it's Lieutenant Whiteshirt, he told me that his officers have the jurisdiction to go anywhere in the country. That's their jurisdiction, and that's the law, that they can arrest anybody or question anybody no matter what. And that is the law. And I said, well, slavery was a law too, but the way you are treating children, young people, tells a lot. So I spoke directly to the principal, and I'll call out her name, Mary Beck at St. Arts. I spoke directly to her and I said, is this something that you support? Police officers in your school harassing your students? She said, absolutely not. She sat there so hopeless and helpless, though powerless, because this officer is telling her that this is what can happen, that her students will be harassed. So Shay, I'm saying that to say there is now, which left my daughter shook, really. I mean, but we are in the fight now to pull CPD out of CPS. What legal steps should parents, students, teachers, anybody who knows this isn't a good idea, what legal steps should we take?
Well, so CPD would have a contract with CPS, and that's how they're able to be in the schools. So well, not all it takes, but what it takes is ending that contract that CPS has with the schools. So this is where the discussion comes in about an elected school board.
Mhm.
A lot of people are supporting. I support elected school board because then I would say get on and reach out to your elected school board member, put pressure on them to vote to get police officers out of the schools. So as of now, the board is appointed. So that means then you get put pressure on the mayor. Another city, I believe, I want to say it's Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Another city just ended their contract and took police out of the schools. And uh, I'm glad you shared your stories there because before you even said that, I was going to say there's absolutely possibly no reason for Chicago police officers to be inside of schools. All it does is, to me, is almost as though you're training the young people to get used to harassment, to get used to being harangued and bothered by the police officers. There have been several cases. There were some cases I prosecuted where the male police officers would harass the young women at the high school. Outside of that, it's just the horrible treatment. The locker searches, um, and to me, it's all a matter of perspective, right? So if you go into an environment every day, your school looks like a jail. You have no resources at the school. You have no books. It's dirty. No one cleans it. And then you have basically correctional officers there every day. What do you think? What's going to motivate a person that goes to see that every day? Your environment matters.
And your
When
uniform.
yeah, you're in uniform, so you can't even express yourself with your clothes. So
Hmm.
you're being told what to do with everything. So and then I mean, how are you supposed to think freely, be inspired, as opposed to someone who's up at a wonderful, beautiful school up in Wilmette that has a beautiful campus with a fountain and all these resources? I think the person up in Wilmette is going to be more inspired and more free thinking because they don't have all of these constant rules, restrictions, people grinding down on them every single day. So, and because of what you explained with that dynamic, a principal should have control over what happens at a school. There's no way someone should be able to come into a school or come into a principal school and tell them what to do. That way, so if you have private, if you feel the need to have security, if you have private security there, then the school employs them. That means the principal is their supervisor. That means the principal can tell them, don't do that, don't do this, or you're fired,
Hmm.
or worse.
Hmm.
So absolutely not. CPD doesn't have to, shouldn't be in schools, and so this issue we're gonna have to, you have to bring to city council meetings, and something we have to gonna have to bring to the mayor in regards to ending that contract.
Yeah, well, I think the time is now to make certain in no uncertain terms that we are expecting the aldermen to not say yes to this budget, this
Mhm.
contract. That we will hold them accountable. That if they don't vote the right way, that we will remember that. And if this mayor doesn't, as wonderful as she may be, and people may believe she is, if this is the one issue we will not tolerate. This is the one issue there is no compromise on. Uh,
Mhm.
if we can invest in the resources to save businesses and to salvage businesses, we can surely invest and make sure that we are developing the minds of the future and
Right.
developing them and keeping them safe. So thank you for that. How do people, let's go back to actual protesting and in cases when people are out, Shay, and there is an instance of police excessive force, or I witness it. What happens? Can do I have the right to record it? Do I have a right? What's my right in terms of making sure that I document this stuff so I can
Mhm.
see?
The video recording has been what has I think swung the pendulum. Um, the old saying, "The revolution will not be televised." Well, it is now.
Hmm.
Without those videos, I don't think we would be able to see the pendulum swing that we've been seeing. I've heard some people say, "Oh, racism or excessive force is really increasing." No, it's just that we're recording it more.
Hmm.
It's been happening, but when people talk about it, they're not believed. So on the other side, you have the absolute an unequivocal right to record whatever you want. Um, if you're recording you can, if you see someone getting pulled over on the side of the road, theoretically, legally, you can pull over, get out, and record them whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
That you have that absolute legal right. And if an officer, is trying to take your phone or break it or crush it, then that officer is breaking the law and he's actually committing a law, committing a crime, because you have the absolute fundamental right to record. And so these cell phones, everyone has one almost.
Mm-hmm.
That is what has been, man, the really the point, so that people who don't experience it every day, like African Americans do,
Mm-hmm.
get to see what is happening. Because before, I think a lot of people just thought, "Oh, that's just someone making that up." There's no way that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you see it in vivid color,
Mm-hmm.
there's no denying it.
Yeah, and the tactics. I want people to be aware of tactics that police officers use because I've had them used on me. They will flash a bold, black, bright light into your camera so that you can't see or pick up. But I think people is if people know that it's their right, it emboldens them. They won't be intimidated. So whatever police officers may try to do, they still won't stop recording.
Mm-hmm.
Shay, here's another thing, and this is not so much about protests, but I just because I know the experiences that we have, and I think it's important that we are armed with information. What we see a lot of is people pull from their cars, and their car is searched. Is that legal, Shay? And what should they do? Because you know, I'm not the type of parent, but there are parents who will say, just do whatever the police say, be quiet, do whatever they say, and I mean, we want our children to come home alive. We do, but we also want our children to live a life with dignity, right? We want
Mm-hmm.
them to be able to live their life, and whatever happens in their life, that is done of their own accord and with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
So, what should people do if they are stopped? Do young people have to get out of their cars? Do they have to allow for a search?
No and no. So in order to search a vehicle, the police need what's called any probable cause. So just because you get pulled over for a traffic stop, the officer should just give you a ticket and send you on your way. Any other conversation, anything else, you don't have to answer a question. Well, one thing I like to tell officers at times that I've been stopped outside of my name, or my license, anything else is I don't answer questions. I don't answer questions. I don't answer questions. And eventually they'll just either let you go or give you your ticket, because for a traffic stop, there's nothing else to talk about.
Mhm.
So if they pull you over for alleged traffic violation and say get out the car, legally no, you don't have to get out the car. There's no reason. And then it's more particular, no, you don't have to consent to a search. I see that way too often, where you see instances where someone asks the officer would say, "Can I search your car?" And someone would go, "Well, do I have to?" And they say, "Yeah." I mean, of course, that's a lie. So if officer says, "Can I search your car?" You say no. The only way they can get into your car is if they have a warrant, if they have a search warrant, and that means they have to leave and go get it. So if officers actually search your car, your trunk, anything to that effect, no, don't fall for the old. Well, if you have nothing to hide, then well, let me see it. No, there's no reason for you to do that. So just you can't. No. And go from there.
And we do want to keep people safe. So Shay and I have different responses, but you don't have to be as a simple no. No, officer, here's my license, here's my registration. This is my name. And
Hmm.
that's it. You don't have to be belligerent, but you can stand firm in saying no. Shay, sometimes that no it incenses and irritates and frustrates and angers officers and officers with a history, as the DOJ has found in Chicago, with the history of not having proper training, can escalate a situation and become angered with the response of no. And in that situation, what happens?
And that situation, I've seen many times, is that most police officers, they resort directly to violence,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they're going to break windows. Um, this is another thing I just thought about. I know people drive around. Whenever I drive around, my doors are locked, but for some reason, people's doors aren't locked. I don't know. So police officers, they'll open the door, they'll check to see if it's locked. They'll just open the door, and they'll grab at you and pull you out. In that instance, I would have to say then, if that's happening, you're gonna just have to let it happen,
Mhm.
because out there on the street, when it comes to a physical altercation, more often than not, you're gonna lose that.
Yeah.
So if they're getting physical, which happens more often than not, is as if officers, they are taught, seem to be taught problem solving skills. It's either do what I say or I'm going to beat you up.
Mhm.
Um, so there's a lot that should go in between that. So but if it starts to get that way, more often than not, I just tell my clients, just uh, you know, go ahead and go with it, and then let a lawyer deal with it in court.
Yeah, I what I want us as Chicagoans to do is make sure that you are familiar with the consent decree. You definitely, first of all, find the DOJ's report on the Chicago Police Department, that they did to find that they were absolutely that they were untrained, that they use excessive force 90% of the time, that excessive force oftentimes resulted in death, unnecessary death. We even saw the police, something as simple as a police chase. They just don't stop, and someone died. Someone lost a life. So I want us to know what the consent decree is, because that tells us what it is that we should be demanding from the mayor to ensure happens with these police, the training that is necessary. And some people need to be terminated from the force with some of these cases that they've had for decades, right? Some people have been serving for 20 years and have accrued, as we saw with the officer Chauvin who murdered George Floyd. They've accumulated a record of excessive force and death. Shay, we got a couple of people who have questions, so I'm going to pose some of the questions, and I'm not sure if this is clear to you. What her question is, can you see it on the
I,
screen?
I can see it.
Yeah.
How do we skirt around probable cause? Um, hmm. I don't think. I I don't know if maybe if she means that. How do the police get around probable cause sometimes?
I
Uh,
think he's talking about, like, in cases that we're fighting for right now. How do we, when they say, well, this may be probable cause because George Floyd was this, or we thought Ahmaud Arbery was robbing a place. How do we get around that when, as a defense, as a prosecutor, how do you get around that?
oh, so if I'm thinking about it from the prosecutor side, it's just a matter of disproving whatever nonsense they're making up. Of course, it's difficult to get in someone's mind and to see what they're thinking. But if you never got a call about, say for instance, you say, oh, I grabbed that guy because I thought he was a suspect in an armed robbery. Okay, where's the call for the armed robbery? What was the description given of the person in the armed robbery? What time did the armed robbery come? These types of things. And if none of it adds up, then it's pretty clear to see the officer just making something up to try to justify what they did. And I think a lot of times that's not that difficult to get around, especially too now with the body cameras becomes important too, becomes an issue. Um, and you can also get officers' radio communications are also possible to obtain. So these are things you can all check into, and attorneys can get these items, and so it's easy to disprove a bogus story.
Shay, she actually clarified it. So she's
Okay.
talking about when you or I, citizens, are being pulled over. How do we skirt around a police saying that they have probable cause to search your car?
Well, so that's the time where it becomes the officers then going into doing what they want to do, and perhaps lying to get what they want to get. So in that case, that's when I say, uh, just continue saying, you can't search the car. If they forcibly want to pull you out and search the car, then that's on them. And then that's the case you bring to an attorney. And the thing is, with people, as citizens, just have to be clear. No, no, no. Don't waver. Don't say okay, or maybe. Just no, no, no. As long as you were consistently saying no, and especially they should have on their body cameras, that should be on there, right? You saying no. When can I search your car? No. Well, I have probable cause. No, you don't. Just no, no, no. But if they're gonna continue and persist to do what they want to do, you know,
and,
uh,
and people should be clear, and young people should be clear. Any other words are considered, can incriminate you. So don't even engage in conversation. The answers are yes or no, not anything more. You don't have to say where you're going and start this whole conversation, because that could be used as probable cause. We're running out of time, Shay. Really quick, can should they ask for, people say white shirt, but what is the proper word, the proper title for if they are being demanded to get out of their car to ask for their supervisor? Who would be their supervisor? Is it a lieutenant? Who is it?
what well, usually the word supervisor would be fine. Oh, and I just want to add too before I forget. Everything I say here, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
Every case is different.
Yeah.
So don't take what I say as necessarily legal advice for that particular person.
Yes.
If you have a particular issue, call me and I can parse that out for you. But yeah, it's just going to be a supervisor. So it's either going to be a sergeant, a lot of times a watch commander, but it's usually a sergeant. White shirts, what people they usually call sergeants, and then you can go up from there to lieutenant and higher up.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. We are wrapping up, Shay. I had another point, but it is slipped my mind. So what I will do is say to you, just tell people again the Oh, I know what it was. If I'm stopped and I'm pulled over and I'm harassed and I'm told that I need to get out of my car, and then they let me go, like they don't harm me, but they may detain me. So actually it was two things. If I'm a girl or a woman and I'm in the car with a gentleman who's driving and he's been stopped, what are my rights? Do I have to show or give my ID, or what do I have to do with when I'm driving with somebody else?
Yeah, the ID, there's a statute in Illinois says you gotta give the ID. But anything else, no, you don't have to consent to search. They shouldn't.
If I
Huh?
have my purse in the car and they're searching the car, do they get to search my purse?
Nope, nope, nope. So legally, that's all separate. So you're absolutely right. So even if they, for some reason, think they can get into the car, your purse or your bag, whatever that's your item. You have possession of that. It's yours. So you would have to give them permission. If you say no, they can't go in there.
What if
Uh,
they find something what if they find something that gets me in trouble, but I didn't give them permission to search?
then that's when an attorney comes in, and we would do a motion to try to get that item suppressed because they violate your constitutional rights, and that's why we have the Constitution in this country. So officers can't just do what they want to do to people, whether they find something or not.
Thank you so much, Shay. We definitely have to have you back, and you definitely need to have your own platform, because people are losing their rights because they are giving them away because they don't even know the rights in the first place. And
Absolutely.
and the police stay in power and stay oppressing us also because they know of our ignorance in terms of law. So I want to thank you. Uh, our,
Thank you.
our only goal is to ensure that as people are fighting for their rights, whether they're taking to the streets, however they are protesting, if they're not causing harm to anyone, that they should not be harmed and kept safe. And so we just want to thank you. You have a message here. To hear LaShawn Brown says, Attorney Allen, you are awesome. Great information.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very that's very kind. I appreciate it.
It is kind, but it's the truth, Shay. So I want people to make sure you're paying attention to the scrolling. Shay's information that is scrolling past. We'll let it scroll past a couple of more times. Shay, if you have any parting words, you can share them now. But I do want people to see your information so that they can copy it down as you leave us.
Yeah, I just want to say that we're going through some very trying times right now, but it's just people expressing the suppressed anger we've had for 400 years. Everyone's goal at this time is you really want to just make the world understand, make the country understand what we've been going through as African Americans, and we have the absolute right to be treated equally and have the same basic rights as everyone else. And even though it's 2020, that is a struggle that still continues every single day. And I fully support it. And I'm glad that I can be alive to be part and participate and hopefully help move this forward. If it's not anything, it's for my own little guys that I don't want them to grow up and have to deal with the same issues I've had to deal with.
Absolutely. And so we want to thank you, Shay, for joining us for the Girls Like Me Project's Power Hour. Every Saturday we are here at 10 o'clock a.m. As you know, we had to move platforms virtually because of COVID. And so now, instead of just serving our girls, this Saturday is dedicated to what empowers our families and our communities. We want you to join us tomorrow at 79th and Cottage Grove. We'll be joining My Block, My Hood, My City, and other the Chatham organizations for a peace walk. So we ask you all to join us tomorrow. We have to keep the city peaceful, and being peaceful means that we are dealing with a peaceful police force and a police presence. That is the ultimate peace. So thank everybody. Shay, thank you.
Thank
and
you.
We'll have you back again.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. You all can continue to follow. And please, if you found any of this information that you've seen today helpful, please make sure that you like the page, you like the post, and that you are sharing this information. This information is important and pertinent to all ages, whether we are a son or a daughter, whether we are a mother or a father, whether we are aunt or uncle, grandmother or grandfather, teacher, mentor, uncle, niece. This information is vital. All of us, as we can see, can have an interaction that oftentimes does not end positively. And so the more information we know, the more of our rights we know, then at least we can be armed with that as we interact. If you are so moved to protest and join in the uprising for justice in this country and a breakdown of social structural violence and structural systems that promote and propagate racism, then we just ask that you don't ever go out alone by yourself. That we ask that you try your best to get as much organizing information as you can prior to. Have on hand Shay's information. Have on hand information of bond, and we will place those things on our Facebook page for you to have, so that you know people, lawyers, free attorneys that are giving Shay and others who are giving free counsel and helping to get you out and bond you out, bail you out of jail. As you heard, you should not give up your rights freely. You don't have to have anybody search your car. If you are in front of a police officer and you notice that their camera is not on, if you don't have to engage with that officer, you should move away from that officer. If an officer's camera is not on, you should move away from that officer, because you have nothing except your own recordings of what his interactions are, and you don't know, you can't assume what his actions are without that camera on. Please, please, please. We will also post a link to the DOJ's report of the Chicago Police Department, but we also encourage you to Google consent decree in Chicago Police Department so you can see for yourself what the DOJ has said about the police department, that they have themselves found that the Chicago Police Department over 90% of the time has engaged in excessive force, and that excessive force has included death, unnecessary death, that they lack the proper training, that they lack the proper authority systems that would then hold them accountable, meaning that they're reprimanded, meaning that they're disciplined. That doesn't happen, according to the Department of Justice. And because of that, if we're armed with knowing that, then as we see the CPD asked to have their contract extended into CPS to continue to be student resource officers, we must reject that. We must say no. We do not want our children under the thumbs of police who are brazen, police who just are not properly trained, if that's the bottom line. But there's so much more we know that goes into that. But what we know is that schools can always hire And they don't have to absolutely have security forces. Schools can have on hand deans and those who enforce the rules of the school through their own administration, administrative offices, and positions. It does not have to be actual police. We do not have to have punitive uh, 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 institutions, punitive entities in our schools. There's restorative justice practices that can go on in our school. Dr. Shaniqua Jones is someone who is phenomenal in that work. CPD can hire CPS, I'm sorry, and CPD, but CPS can hire people like Dr. Shaniqua Jones to build out these restorative practices in their schools so that we don't have to rely on police as much. I've shared my story, which happened over 28 years ago. That story, I still have tears are not dropping from my eyes now because I've learned to control them, but they're still welling up to think about what happened to me on that day. I still think about what seeing my daughter and how powerless she felt. I still look at on the side of in the in schools where children are sent to the police office. I still think about our young sister who was grabbed in Spring Valley, who was grabbed by her hair and dragged across a classroom. That still happens. I still think about the young girl who was choked in the classroom. I think of all these things, and it happened at the hands of the police. We must remove police from our schools. Join that fight. You can follow that hashtag at hashtag police free schools and also hashtag CPD out of CPS. More of that is on our page. I've also created a statement and submitted that statement. It's a heavy time. It is it's a time for newness. It is a time for resolution. It is time for us to um, build anew, build from within. Girls Like Me Project is here to help us facilitate that newness, to bring new ideas that aren't really new, but Sankofa ideas. We're here to facilitate going back and fetching the knowledge, the wisdom, traditions, the love of what brought us this far and using it a new way, pairing it with a new way, a new energy of the young people to take us into our future, a new future that is bold and courageous and confident and full of love and full of our own power and love for ourselves. We can do it. We will do it. Girls Like Me Project is here every Saturday to ensure that we have what we need to strengthen ourselves, our minds, and our bodies to do it. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Uh, yes. Mom, Jeanette Form and Mama J says if an officer doesn't have cameras on, we should speak that into our own recordings. ID him or her, meaning get their badge numbers if you can't get their names and say it into your own device what you see if theirs is not on. Also, send pictures. Send out what you document. If you document and capture anything, send that to media. And if you don't have media that you know, media contacts that you know, I would just upload those yourself and use all the hashtags in the world. But what you also can do, you all, is look at stories that are breaking about in your city locally about these issues and look at who that journalist is. And that journalist usually has a social media page or some kind of platform that you can follow. So that way you know how to reach out and send your things to them. These are the media literacy things that we need to be aware of. And then also look at other, there's The Tribe, which is TRIIBE. That's a youth-led news outlet. That's something that you want to do. Black Youth Project also has a news outlet for young people and young voices. Public Narrative, all of these places, True Star Foundation, and Girls Like Me, we are all using our voices to make sure that we are telling the stories of what's happening with our young people from their perspective. So share anything that you have, upload, tag us so that we can share it, all of those people. And all of us, it is traumatic to see violence. especially murder. We don't want to watch those videos. I personally don't post and don't want to watch those videos. But at some point, a journalist, that's their job. They will have to, and so you can send it to them. We are over time, 11 minutes over, but this is a very important topic. So I didn't want to skate over it. Again, I'm inviting you all out tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock a.m. to join us at the Peace Rally, the Peace Walk. It's also going to be a food giveaway quickly following at 11:30. And so we have the Peace Walk and then the food giveaway taking place immediately following 79th and Cottage Grove. Please join us. One of our girls, our representative, Pomaya Sewell, will be speaking as well, addressing the audience. So join us, please. And with that, you all, I'm going to say um, thank you for joining us. Goodbye. Stay safe. Stay safe today as you go out into if you protest or whatever you choose to do with your day. Stay safe. Drink lots of water. Love each other. Say you love each other. Be loving and kind to one another. Support wherever you see something that needs to be fixed, cleaned, loved on, hugged, a smile, whatever you see a need for, you be the source of it. All right, y'all. Have a great, great, powerful Saturday, and I hope to see you tomorrow morning, 79th and King Drive at 10 o'clock a.m. Peace out.